What's going on, growers? It's James Prigioni coming to you live from Jersey. It's April 24th today. A lot has happened in the past week. The forest has fully awakened. Some of the trees have set fruit, and I want to share with you what any of you can have in your own backyard. Let's go! I want to start today's video in the side garden, in this section that's not that big. I think this can relate with a lot of you guys watching, a lot of gardeners in general, because it's not a huge area. But what we try to do is utilize as much space as we can. That's one of the things I love about food forests, is that they're scalable. It works on a small location like this, and it also works with a huge amount of acres. And look at this, we've got some bees really working hard on these blueberries. This right here is a Darrow blueberry, and these have large blueberries, about the size of quarters when they're fully mature. So those are gonna be so delicious when those start producing for us. And here we've got an Almada red apple. Yes, this is an apple, even though it looks like a peach with those pink flowers. They're really distinct, those flowers. Overall, the tree is doing real well. I'm happy with that, and I can't wait to eat some of those red fleshed apples. Underneath, the strawberries are starting to flower. As you can see, the birds are dropping a little bit, so they're fertilizing for us, doing some work. That's always nice when you have the system working for you, and you don't have to do everything. And we'll step forward a little bit. Some more apple trees. There's the wine sap back there, performing excellent. That one's also been one of our best apples on the property. It always seems to produce well for us. More blueberries loaded with flowers. So we're in Jersey. You gotta go grow blueberries. You gotta go tomatoes. Those are some of the best crops that we actually grow around here. And the bees have been busy on this one as well, as you can see. It's a perfect day to be a bee. And it's a perfect day to actually be out here. It's beautiful. We're enjoying the weather. And that's why I wanted to bring you all along, show you just what a couple years of investing and just having the accumulation of things to come together can create and can turn into. Here we've got the black cap raspberries, Asian pear, elderberries, and then this trails back into the main food forest. Let's go there, and then we can check the new food forest as well. Now we'll step into one of the entrances for the main food forest. And this is kind of a newer section right here, but it bleeds out into the 7-year-old or maybe even 8-year-old now food forest. Right here is one we're added that I'm excited about, even though it's small. This is a Jersey beach plum, so it's a native one, and it's performing well. I'm gonna add, I think, 1 or 2 more as the years progress. Along this fence line, we've got a grape that's doing well. This is pruned, as you can see, pretty nicely, and this is pruned to cane pruning. That's the style right here. Then right in front of me right here, this is a Thundercloud plum. Not a lot of flowers this year, but I think it's going to grow well, and it should perform, I think, excellently in the coming years. Let me take you over into the rest of the garden now. And now as I step into the main food forest area, you'll notice here in the entrance, we've got some ARONIA. This is a bush and a fruit that's not common that you'll find in the stores really, but it's something that's fun to grow. We've got 2 varieties to help pollinate one another. So something I want to encourage you all to do is the main thing you want to grow first is things that you're going to eat. So that's important. The second though, I like to grow things that interest me, that I find to be different, that get me excited to even come out here and to do more. Because something like a food forest, the thing is, it's not going to happen overnight. But in my opinion, the things that are truly worth it take time. So I think that's a part of it. Also, when I'm moving through this forest garden today, I want to talk a little bit about design. That's the main idea, that we're designing a food forest. We're not just putting plants randomly together. And when we put plants and trees and perennials in the same section, we'd like them to serve multiple functions. That's something else I want to mention. I'll show you some of the plants that I have in the garden and some of the ways I'm using that idea of having plants serve multiple function. That's a permaculture idea, and that's something I like to incorporate in my design. You'll notice above me here, we've got a trellis that we made. This is for the grapes. We've got a Concord grape, and starting to leaf out, showing good signs. Hoping to make some jelly with that this year. Underneath that, you'll find that common theme that I always talk about, the strawberries underneath, matting the ground out while also getting a good production out of it. Here, the Prigioni apple is just in full bloom. It looks beautiful in my opinion. It looks like we're going to get a lot of fruit on it, and we're also helping the bees out. And this will help pollinate a number of the other apples, which is important. Next, I want to show you right here, we've got a rhubarb that's performing nicely. One thing you'll notice is it's got this flower head shooting right out the top of it. We don't want that. We want to get rid of that and remove it because we want this to focus on vegetative growth, producing leaves. We don't want the flowers or anything. So when you see that starting to come up, I suggest removing it. This plum tree's performing nicely, and we're continuing to go through and take off any of these little branches that are growing that are wasting growth. Over here we've got a couple more grapes under another trellis, and these grapes are waking up also. We've got a Catawba over there, and then I believe this one is a Niagara right here. Underneath me here, you'll notice the tomatoes. I brought the tomatoes outside, the ones that are getting large. One thing that from observing this year is it seems like we're ahead of where we were last year, time-wise, and it seems like it's going to be warm for the next 10 days or so. So I'm going to take the chance of moving out some of my tomatoes and transplanting them much earlier than last year. But it's good that I have so many, because if it doesn't work out, I always have replacements. Here you can see the ARONIA cherry. This is the most blossoms it's ever had, which is encouraging, and we think we're going to get a good amount of fruit on this. Just like most of the other fruits though, we've got early varieties, mid-season, and late ones. The bees have been busy on this ARONIA cherry. I think they're loving the weather as much as I am. Hazelnuts have just grown so much the past year or so. They've gotten so large, and not that many catkins this year, but I can just see how much fruit we're going to be getting in the future. I'm thinking buckets and buckets. Here's one of our better performing trees right here. This little pear, might be small, but it's got a lot of character. It's got great pears on it, Asian ones, a few different varieties, the Chijiro, the Shinseki, and the 20th century pear. At my feet here, we're starting to see some of our other flowers come up. California poppy, as you can see, coming up on its own. There's also, it looks like some asparagus coming up from seed, which is cool. More California poppy over here. Here we've got the peas that are performing well, right behind the echinacea. So those will be nice companions, it looks like. Those peas will just grow right up above those echinacea along the fence line. Then we'll plant cucumbers behind that. Make sure we're getting multiple yields. Here it looks like the persimmon is waking up now. This is the Nikita's gift. So it looks like it's going to have a good year as well. The asparagus, we're trying to eat as many as we can of those, but it's always fun when you can't keep up with the eating of them. Next thing you'll notice as I walk over here, we've got some section in the fruit forest where it's sort of open, and this is by design. I wanted to have some areas where we can plant some annuals, some tomatoes, some peppers. They've always performed well in this section here, so we left that open, and I think that's a good idea. It's almost like it's confusing for pests, because all you have a food forest of a variety of different kinds of plants, trees, so it's not one condensed area of everything. This way we can stick things like our annuals in a section here, and I think it's a little harder for the pests to find them. Another thing you'll notice is I took the board up. Some people have asked me, when do I take the board up for the board trick when planting carrots? Carrots take 2 to 3 weeks to germinate on average, so right about that 2-week mark I like to come out and grab the board, pick it up. As you can see, the carrots are starting to sprout here, which is a great sign. A few other weeds too, but we'll just remove them as the carrots get a little bigger. I'll show you some carrots I planted in the other food forest a couple weeks ahead of that. And some of these brassicas in the corners are performing nicely. As you can see, one thing you'll notice is we've got a pot next to it. So that's a little trick that we just actually discovered, and we're going to be utilizing because we had an issue with some of the other brassicas. Some of my best brassicas on the property got attacked by, I did all I could for the fencing, but they still got attacked by a groundhog. Came right over the fence. So what we're doing now is every night I'm coming out and just taking this pot, covering the brassica, and then removing it in the morning. This way we're reducing any chance of those groundhogs getting any more of our stuff, and it's an easy fix in my opinion. It's funny how I spent so much time this year focusing on protecting my investments, yet still I had some of my brassicas get eaten by groundhog. And at first I have to admit I was a bit discouraged for a second there, but then I kind of changed my perspective and I focused on all the brassicas that I still have. And some of them I can still transplant out, and all these blessings all around me, the fruit trees, the bees, and everything else. So I heard someone say it's impossible to be grateful and upset at the same time. So that's what I did. I switched my focus onto things I do have, and that changed a lot for me. You'll notice, by the work that I put into this, it's a lot of work to grow your own food. It's not easy. But going back to what I said, a lot of things that are worth it usually aren't easy. And it might cost a lot of time, but we can't look at just the cost of things. We have to look at the true value, the worth of something. So I really and truly believe that growing your own food as naturally as you can, taking control of your health, taking control of your own garden, and making the steps to live as naturally as you can, that's worth it for me. So that's where I'm gonna put my time and effort, even if it doesn't always seem to pay off right away. Above me, we've got the queen of the garden, the big cherry. This thing has grown into an absolute monster. It's got the most fruit on it that I've ever seen. A lot of these are all pollinated, getting heavy, which is beautiful. I'm so excited to see that. We added some sweet cherries through the years to help pollinate this one, and I think it's definitely helped out. Here we've got the Montmorency cherry. This one's actually still flowering a little bit, but also performing well. This one's always a good producer for us. This isn't a sweet cherry like the Rainier or the Bing. This is actually a sour cherry, but I still really enjoy the flavor. The apricots have little apricots all over them, little pinhead ones. This variety, as well as this variety over here of apricot, doing real well. As we can pull just a couple of those off, you can see the fruit right there. Looking great. Excited for apricots this year. I really think I'm going to be getting a good harvest of those. And we'll step over here to the currants. Doing excellent. I mean, this year it looks like we're going to have more fruit on just on everything. And that's what happens when you can focus on a system that's perennial. Every year it gets better with less work. That's the design. When you can have things work for you again, it's encouraging to come out here, and it gives you time to focus on things like annuals. Things like the spinaches. I brought you along as I thinned these spinaches, which are performing nicely, and then I transplanted them over behind me. It's been a little warm today, so what I did was just created a little shade for them. This way they can adjust, and they seem to be doing well. I'm staying on top of the water. I'm keeping them relatively shaded till they can be comfortable in their new home and reduce that transplant shock as much as I can. We can spend a lot of time in this food forest. There's always more to show, but I want to bring you into the 1-year-old food forest, actually the 2-year-old, going on its 2nd year, because I think some of you started a food forest about the same time as I did. So let's show you guys what you should be looking at, kind of, and how you go from how you can get here to a 7 to 8-year-old food forest. You got to start at the first year. Year number 1, then year number 2. There's no trick. There's no way to fast forward in time. The only thing you can do is appreciate each moment that comes along with it. In the 2-year-old food forest now, you can see some of the peach trees that we pruned. They look relatively small, but they're growing very healthy. They've got good structure, so we're not wasting any growth on things that are in the wrong position. Like this right here, I'm gonna pop off just because it's not in the right spot, and get rid of it when it's young. Here is the sad part of kind of what's happened recently. This is where we lost some of the brassicas to the groundhog. Like I said though, I'm focusing on the ones I do have and being thankful for those. But you can see he really just did some work very quickly on them. Some of them may come back. I'm not sure if it's even worth waiting for them. But some of the other ones they took right down to the main stem. So that's not going to be coming back. We'll have to change that out for something else. But that's okay. We've got that quick, easy way to fix it, which I think is going to make a big difference. Strawberries doing fantastic on the ground over there. Another young peach tree that we just recently put in. This one actually has a nice little fruit set on it. So as young as this is, looks like it might be producing some fruit for us at that age. And you can see some of the grapes. These are coming up. This is an Einsteck grape. I've got about 4 or 5 more along the fence line. I pruned these back relatively heavy, but we focused on the roots for grapes at a young age. This way they can perform better in the future. Some of the apples and stuff are performing nicely. These strawberries are doing excellent. When it comes to strawberries, I want to show you over here. This is the 2nd year where they're going to be performing well. We're going to see flowers on these and get a lot of fruit. But when you have strawberries and when you put them in the first year, like these ones I just planted in the early spring, I highly suggest that you guys don't be greedy and you try to take these flowers off, the first round of flowers. So I'm going to poke off these first rounds of flowers, which would be strawberries. But the first year we want the strawberries to focus on 2 things, on actual growth of the roots and also on producing runners. So we didn't start with a lot of strawberries here, but that's the same concept we did for this section back here. We made sure to pull off those flowers the first year so it can produce a lot of runners and turn it into a whole mat. We're basically going from something like 10 to 15 strawberries to 50 in 1 year, getting that idea of compounding, multiplication of interest and everything. So you can see the new blueberries that we put in, doing excellent. This is the idea we had where we brought 2 blueberries and planted them right next to each other. One's a pink lemonade, one's a Patriot, one's like a pink colored berry, one's a dark black one. So it's going to be interesting to see them fruiting together. The pears and apples and all the new fruit trees that we put in here have done well. And we've got thick wood chips. I'll show you some evidence over there. But these fruit trees, we went from bare root, we put them in the ground. Since I put them in and I watered them the first time I put them in, I haven't watered them since. We're trying to not baby our trees, we're trying to guide them along. And you'll see here, this is what I'm talking about, the depth of the wood chips. You'll see this brassica that I recently transplanted. You can see how deep of wood chips I have, but I didn't plant the brassica into the wood chips. I planted the brassica in the dirt. So these wood chips are very thick back here because we had to reduce some of the weeds. We get wild violet, which is a weed that can be pretty invasive. It's a perennial around here. So we made sure to fill that whole section up so we didn't have to deal with it. Here as well, you'll notice we're using just some chicken wire fencing to try to keep the groundhog out. It's done well for us since our last attack. And again, you can see how deep the wood chips are, and we're always planting into the soil. If you want, you guys could try to plant in the wood chips, but I'll promise you, you're not going to get good results. I've tried it many times. The wood chips, they are mainly just a mulch. They're not a growing medium. We're still in the 2-year-old food forest now. You'll notice we have garlic planted here. This is one of the plants that I'm using to serve multiple functions. So the first function is obvious. It's going to be used as food. But the second one is going to help us for pest control. So we've got a couple rows of garlic, one here, one there. And between those rows, I'm going to plant tomatoes. So this garlic will help keep the tomatoes safe from pests and also produce some food for us. Trying to, again, use the design to grow more food and have nature work for us and help protect our plants and just do some extra stuff for us. Here we've got the carrots that we did with the board trick, and they're coming up nicely. They've got their true leaves now, forming well. You can see the line of them. And then over here we've got another row of carrots that we planted a little after, and those are coming up and doing well also. Now I want to bring you back into the chicken coop where we've got another plant that we're kind of used to serve multiple functions, not just feeding us. I'm in the chicken coop now, and behind me we've got 3 autumn olives that we just recently put in. So the design with this is the autumn olives are first going to form a function of feeding us. The other function is they're going to actually be feeding the chickens. And you can use autumn olives also as nitrogen fixers because that's what they will do. So you can plant them around some of your trees, but I decided to keep them in here because when they fruit, the fruit is going to drop down right into the ground and the chickens are going to eat that. We're not going to have to do any extra work. That's going to be working for us. Another idea is to use the fence, which is mainly to keep the chickens into their chicken pen in their area, but we're also using it as a trellis to grow food. We've got different kinds of raspberries and different kinds of blackberries and also some grapes growing along here, and we're also fitting in things like pigeon peas, another feed for the chickens. So again, the idea is to think about your design a little bit, to not just jump in, but to do some homework, journal some things, and then attack the situation. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. I hope you're starting to realize what any of you can have in your own backyard if you have the space. I wanted to thank everyone in the comments who left ideas for the name for the new apple tree from seed, something to do with tuck. So there's a number of good ones and we're still looking through them. If you still have ideas, share it down in the comment section. And just imagine and try to get a little perspective, or just try to think about, this is just the beginning of the season. This is actually kind of empty for what the food forest is going to look like. That's why I want to bring you all along for this weekly progression. You guys can even look back years before and see what it was like before where we're at now. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Do not forget to ring that notification bell so you can follow along for all these videos. Get here early in the comments because that's usually when we can get in, answer them, and connect with all you guys. See you in the next one. James Prigioni and Tuck, we